Welcome to Up Level, Real Health, Real Talk with Dr. Jenna Blasi. I'm Dr. Jenna. I spent years crafting ways to help women thrive, and I want to help you do the same. On this podcast, we dive deep into health at every level, focusing on the mind, the body, and the spirit. This is where real conversations meet transformational wellness. We'll be talking about all the things that truly matter, from nutrition and fitness to lifestyle, mindset, and personal development. Plus, the real deal on managing stress and navigating menopause. So if you're ready to elevate your health journey with authentic, transformative insights, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to Up Level. I'm Dr. Jenna Blasi, and today I want to have a different type of conversation. I want to talk about intuition. A lot of my podcasts, it's been kind of structured. I have wanted to create an outline and to make sure that I, follow certain points, that I get certain points across, that I don't forget to say certain things, although always inevitably forget to say something that I might have wanted to say because I still stay in the flow. But today's episode is really about being in the flow and following intuition. So I created no outline because I want to be present and I want to let my intuition guide me through what needs to be said or heard. If you've seen those memes, sometimes that people start off and they say, I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm hoping, my intention, I should say, is that I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'm going to allow to come through what it is that I want to share, and that is in the highest good of all that I share. Intuition is really a topic that's near and dear to my heart, because when we listen to our intuition, we're in the flow. When we listen to our intuition, we're in our spiritual selves and out of the ego. And the ego will frequently, and the mind, try to pull us away from that higher guidance. And intuition is our higher guidance speaking to us, God, spirit, universe, communicating with us, speaking through us. And it can be a feeling. It can come in I do believe that we get certain signs, but those signs are our interpretation for them. And so that's still coming from that deeper place within us. But most of us are not raised to honor this aspect of ourselves. Most of us are raised to just use our thinking minds and be rational, and everything has to make sense. When really, if you look at anybody that's created something amazing in their life and in the world, it probably wasn't rational, right? At one time or another, it wasn't realistic. The Wright brothers taking bicycles off of their roof because they had a vision of flight wasn't rational. And so when we can follow our guidance, that's when the magic happens. That's when miracles happen. And I can talk to you all about diet and macros and hitting your protein, but ultimately we want to be eating intuitively. We want to be working through our lives intuitively, because when we're in the flow and we're in our intuition, we're in a flow state, we're in a relaxed state, it's effortless. We're not forcing anything. And remember, force negates. So when we get into that thinking mind, that ego mind, and when I say thinking mind, I don't mean using our conscious mind to our benefit, where we're consciously choosing what goes into our thinking mind. But even within that, we can consciously choose what we're planting in our garden, what we're putting in from the conscious mind to the subconscious mind. But the intuition is that deeper place where we're in a receiving state and we're hearing and feeling and knowing what needs to happen next, or who we should call, or where we should go. Many of us have had an experience where we suddenly change course just based on intuition, or we reach out to somebody. They're like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking of you. Well, that's part of that thought. We're all connected, and energy goes out and it's felt and goes into the other being that we're thinking about. But it also can be, you got an intuitive hit to call that person. Sometimes when I'm thinking of various patients, or clients that I'm working with, and I'll feel them, and I need to reach out to this person. So some of you may have a really well developed sense of intuition, and some of you may be really disconnected from it, or maybe never felt connected to it. So what I want to talk about today is, how do we strengthen this relationship? Because it's a relationship. It's a relationship with our higher self. It's a relationship with that higher guidance. I was raised by lawyers. And so I joke, like, I can Rubik's Cube the hell out of anything and argue both sides of a debate. And I was very much raised in an environment where we value intelligence and value the mental capacities. And so when I was about 27, I decided to go backpacking through Europe by myself. And I just put on my backpack, and I mapped out a general plan of, I'm going to start here, and there's a few points along the way that I know I want to get to. And so I had a really loose plan. And I don't remember where this inspiration came from, but my goal during this trip was to get in touch with my intuition, to stop listening to my mind. I had gotten to the place where the constant chatter of my mind was exhausting. How many of you can relate to that? I mean, the just incessant, Earl Nightingale and Bob Proctor used to say, or maybe it was George Bernard Shaw, I'm not sure, 95% of people aren't thinking. And then a lot of us, the first time I heard that, I was like, no, everybody's thinking. But mental chatter is not thinking. It's just on, all of the paradigm, the programming, just on and on and on and on. And we'll maybe have a feeling or a thought, and then our mind will argue with it. And so in this trip, I decided, hey, I said to my mind, the chatter, which is not the higher self, let's call that the ego self. I said, look, you've been in the driver's seat for a long time now, and I'm ready to try something else and to take back control. And so I envisioned that I had a volume dial on my chatter, my mental chatter. And if I got an intuitive hit, I made a promise to myself on this trip. If I got an intuitive hit, I was going to follow it. And if the mental chatter came up, I was just going to turn it down like a radio dial, radio volume control. And so off I went. And I think I started off in England and went here and there, and then took a ferry over to France. Anyway, at one point in my trip, I had ended up at this, it was this vegan community. But it was February, and it was cold, and nobody was there but me. And so instead of charging me for staying there, the people that ran this place just had me work off the land. So I was out there in their garden, and I was tilling and working off the land, and there was this creek, ice cold, very cold creek, because it was February, through the property. And that was where I was bathing in the morning. And if any of you ever read Clan of the Cave Bear, I felt like Ayla, or Isla, I think it was Ayla, from that book. And I was really just tapping into my tribal self. And I really enjoyed it. And they ate, they were making food. I'd been vegetarian for years, and they made lentils, and they had all of these foods they were vegan. And so it was really fun, and I was really enjoying it. And one night after dinner, I was walking back to my little cottage, and suddenly this thought just came through, and it said, you need to leave and go to your next destination. And then my mind came in and started arguing with that. What are you talking about? This is great. And all of the reasons why I should stay. And then I grabbed my volume control, and I said, no, I made a deal. I'm not listening to you. And I just turned it down. Kind of like a la 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 situation. I just turned it down, and I went to bed, and I got up, I believe the next day, and I got on a train, and I went to my next destination. And I'm on the train, and I'm sitting there thinking, why? Why did I leave? That was great. I wasn't there as long as I had planned to be. What's going on? And I got to my next destination, which I think was Normandy. And I met this mom and this daughter who lived in Paris, which was my next destination. And I think I was at some cleansing retreat or something in Normandy. And so I met this mom and this daughter who were only there for a few days. whatever it was, like I would have missed them if I hadn't gotten on that train and left where I had come from and gone to the next place. And so they invited me to stay with them in Paris. And again, they sort of ate like I ate, like they ate seaweed and lentils and because France can be it's not necessarily like my style of food. Beautiful food, don't get me wrong. But as someone who was vegetarian, it's not super veggie friendly, or at least it wasn't. Anyway, and so these people, eat lentils and seaweed and like health food, right? Not rich, creamy, all the things. And so I finished my cleanse at this place, which was a wonderful experience. And then I went to Paris, and they ended up living in this beautiful place in walking distance to this concert that I was going to for several nights while I was there. So the moral of the story, or the recap, is that when I followed my intuition and didn't listen to the rationalization and the rational mind trying to tell me why I should or should not do something, it was as if the red carpet got laid out for me. I mean, and that's just, I'm just giving you one example. There were so many examples of these amazing things happening, or me averting something that would not have been amazing had I not listened to my gut, to my intuition, and had listened to my rational mind. Bob Proctor, he used to say, rationalizing is rationing lies to yourself. And I remember a friend of mine, Kyle Cease, I was listening to an interview that he did, and he said, whenever you find yourself justifying something, you're not in alignment with your higher self, or there's something you're not listening to. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know exactly what he said, but something to that effect, that, when you find yourself justifying, like, so for example, let's say you have a relationship with a friend, it's not a healthy relationship, and you find yourself saying, oh, but sometimes they're nice to me, or there was that one time that they were really great. We're justifying, right? That's not a healthy relationship, and we're looking for the reasons why it is. That's how I ended up stopping teaching fitness classes. I taught fitness classes for years, loved it, and one day I was walking down to class, and I started replaying in my brain all the reasons why I was going to continue teaching, why I should continue teaching. Oh, it's fun, and these people have been taking my class for years, and blah, 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 all these reasons. And then I remembered my friend Kyle, and I went, oh, I'm justifying continuing to teach. Why am I doing that? And that's when it struck me that I didn't want to teach anymore. And I'd been teaching for years. And after COVID, when everything shut down and all the gyms I was teaching at and fitness centers shut down, and I started working out at home, I was really enjoying having my own schedule and doing my own routines. And so when everything opened back up, I didn't go back to the same number of classes. I mean, I used to teach 9 classes a week, then I taught 6 classes a week, then I taught 5, then I taught 4, then I taught 3. And when I came back, after everything reopened, I was only teaching, if I recall, 1 class. I'm trying to remember with rebounding, I think, I had given that up prior. So I was only teaching 1 class. So it was easy to justify just keeping the 1 class. But let's not justify. That's not following our higher guidance. That's not our intuition. And that's not living in alignment. And this is what we do when we have a big dream, but we're afraid. We let our fear get in the way. We have a big dream and we're afraid. And then we don't do the thing that we really want to do because we let the justifications and the fear win, or the rationalizations, or the quote unquote reality of the situation. I kind of lump that with rationalization. And so there are people, and some of the best success stories are people that they left a big job to go after something, and it was risky. It was risky. Maybe they had a family, they had young kids, and they could likely give all the reasons why they should stay in that job. But if the intuition is guiding us somewhere, we want better. The soul wants expansion. The soul is for expansion and full potential of what we're capable of. Then not living in joy, not living in alignment, not living in our passion and in the way we want to live, really ideally is just not acceptable. When I say ideally, like to me, it's not acceptable. So when I say ideally, I mean, I would like you to look at your life. Is this how I want to live? And stop rationalizing and justifying staying in a dead-end job that you don't enjoy, staying in a relationship that's not healthy, doing things that are not healthy for you or that are toxic, and justifying why you're continuing to do it. It's always scary to bet on yourself, but it's always a winning formula to bet on yourself if you really do the work and you go after it. And so some people will ask me, like, how do I know my intuition from my emotions, from my fear? Because sometimes it can be hard to tell. And there have been just a few occasions in my life since I've gone deep into working with my intuition that I got the emotional piece mixed up. And that's why we just want to like breathe and clear. And sometimes we will only have seconds with that intuition before the mind and the ego take over. And so, for example, I will sometimes do an exercise with people. They know they want to move forward with something. Maybe they want to enroll in one of our programs, but they're afraid because it's hard to put ourselves first. It's hard to say, hey, I matter. I'm worth it. I'm going to invest in myself. I'm going to put the effort out there. I'm going to go into the unknown to go after something, a greater version of myself and my life that I want. And it takes like slaying a certain number of demons within ourselves or dragons or old self aspects to do that. Every time I've bet on myself, there's been that moment of fear or self-doubt or that voice that comes in like, oh, you shouldn't do this or wait until this time. And the only time is now. The only time is the present. And I hear from people so often, well, it's not the right time. The opportunities that come our way, follow your gut. They're coming our way typically because it is the right time. And it's our fear preventing us from moving forward with them. I did that with naturopathic school. I did, admittedly. I was ready to go. I was doing all my prerequisites for naturopathic school. And then I freaked out. And I thought, oh my gosh, 4 years of my life and hundreds of thousands of dollars. What if at the end of that 4th year, I get hit by a bus, what will I have done with my life? And I decided that I should travel the country and study with all these different healers in all these different places. And that at the end of 4 years of doing that, I would be so much more eclectic and also not have spent like nearly, like I was going to take the little bit of money that I had saved and go travel, which actually I'm thinking is around the time I put the backpack on and went to Europe. I think it's the same time frame because I had done all my prerequisites for school. And then I was on my last one. I think it was organic chemistry. And then I just was like, nope, I'm not doing this. I'm going to go travel. I'm not going to school. And so, yeah, that was the time that I went and traveled. And so that's why I was doing cleansing retreats and I went and studied Ayurveda in Normandy and this over here and that over there. And I went to Puerto Rico and did like a living foods, raw foods certification. Anyway, I came back from that. And yes, I was more eclectic. And I did learn a lot on that trip. I opened up a little practice. I was doing nutrition and homeopathy and body work. And what I realized was people were coming to me and they were calling me doc. And they had diseases I didn't understand. And they were on medications I didn't know anything about. And I realized, oh my gosh, I can't serve them in the way that I want to. I still want to be a doctor. I still want to go back to school. And so it came around full circle. So was it not the right time the first time? That's debatable. I think I followed my fear potentially more than my intuition. I don't remember honestly well enough because it's possible that intuitively I was like, go do these other things first. But it should never be about time and money. Time and money always work themselves out. People say, oh, I don't have time to do this. I don't have time to do that. We all make time for the things that are important to us. And the money always shows up. I didn't have the money for naturopathic school. I didn't have it when I almost went the first time. I didn't have it when I went the second time. In fact, I probably had less money because I had, gone and traveled. And then in that time got married and bought a house. And was ready to start my family and then decided to go back to school. So much more inconvenient. I spent all of my fertile years in school, in residency, but I don't regret it because I get to serve in a way that I really love and in a deeper way. And so time and money are usually the ways that our justifications and our ego keeps us in fear and keeps us from doing what we really love versus following that guidance and just betting on yourself and going after what you really want. Just like calling somebody that maybe feels uncomfortable to call, but it came to your mind to call them, or anything similar where you get an intuition, you get a message to do something or say something or go somewhere, whatever it is, and you don't do it. So back to the idea of how do I tell emotions from intuition, fear and ego from intuition? One of the things with intuition that I've learned is that it tends to be a lighter feeling. When you think like you get it comes in quickly. So like you'll just get a feeling or a thought. And it's usually a little bit lighter and moving you towards something expansive. Whereas if there's a heaviness, a constriction, right? Intuition typically feels a little expansive. When there's a constriction, then that's often fear. That's ego. And there might be a lot of words attached to it, like blah, 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 blah. So when I'm back to my story about if I'm with someone that wants to do one of our programs, but they're afraid of that they're going to fail, or they're afraid of the time that might be involved, or they're hesitant about the financial investment, whatever it is. Sometimes if people are open to it, and if it comes through intuitively for me to do this, I'll say, can we ask your higher self? And we do a little deep breathing, and I tell them I'm going to ask. And we do have to be specific with our questions when we're asking our higher guidance in this way, because if we're not really specific and we don't ask the right question, the answer may not be clear. But I say, you'll get an answer, but it might only be a few seconds before the paradigm, the old self gives you the story. So let's say you say, is it in my highest good to whatever? And you get a yes. It will be seconds only sometimes before that other voice comes in and goes, no, but blah, 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 blah. And so with intuition is like, if you haven't cultivated, if you haven't developed it, it's a bit like a friend that you don't have trust with and that maybe you never listen to. And every time this friend tries to talk to you, you don't listen to this friend, you ignore them, they're eventually going to stop confiding in you, right? So the intuition, if that's where you're at, it gets very quiet. It's a very quiet voice. And so we have to get quiet to hear it. And I'll often tell people, do little exercises. If you need to develop your intuition, do little exercises where just throughout the week, just little things, act on your intuition. Do the volume control. If that exercise resonates with you, where you're like, oh, I think I should just do this. And then you start to overthink it. Overthink it is ego. Overthink it is small self. Intuition is expansive self, is spiritual self. The overthinking and the ego and the overtalking and the negative self-talk is the smallest part of ourselves. And so when you start playing around with this, I say, for the next week, just every little intuitive hit you have to act on it. You have to act on it right away. And then that voice is like, oh, you're listening? Like a friend. They confide in you and you actually listen. They're going to start to confide a little more. And that voice gets a little louder and a little louder. And eventually that voice is communicating more clearly, louder. And it becomes, for me, it's second nature to just tell my mind to shut up. I was so tired of it to tell it to shut up and be in that intuitive self. Now, sometimes if I'm frantic, I need to quiet myself so I can feel it. But the thing is we know truth when we hear it, we feel it in our bodies. And we know all these people that procrastinate and don't move forward with certain opportunities, in your being if something is right for you. Like they always say, when the student is ready, the master or the mentor will show up, right? And that person knows, you feel it in your being. And so I always feel like these people I get on calls with, there's a reason that they showed up. There's a reason they showed up. Now, is it always that we're going to work together? No. I mean, I turn a lot of people away. But the ones that they know they're there for a reason, I know what we're doing is a great fit and that we can help them, but they let the fear prevent them from moving forward. it's hard to it's hard to watch because we can, one of my mentors said we can always measure what we'll lose, right? Or we can always measure what something will cost, but we can never foresee or measure what we'll gain. And that is the essence of betting on ourselves. When we don't know, when you get married, you don't know. You don't know. You know what you're losing, right? Some people feel like they're losing freedom or they're losing whatever. You don't really know how it's going to go. But if it feels right, you move forward with it. And so the doors that open when we follow the intuition are beyond our wildest dreams. They are beyond. And so the emotional piece, again, back to telling the difference, the emotional piece will feel constricting. It will have emotions around it, typically, whether it's fear or doubt, heaviness versus like if you put yourself in a place where you're like, okay, if money and time and whatever I'm afraid of were no object, would I move forward with this? When my husband and I were looking for a house, I had a vision of what I wanted in a house. And I was looking every day. It was actually therapeutic to me. I would get on real estate sites and I would look at all these houses. And I was looking at houses way beyond our financial means and our financial range at the time, as well as below, because I just knew what I wanted in a house. Who knows where you're going to find it? And every now and then my husband would come by and he's like, and I would be looking at some multi-million-dollar house. And, we didn't have a whole lot of money at that time. And he's like, what are you doing? Why are you even looking at these houses? And I said, because you never know. I'm just looking for what I want because you never know when a house is going to go into foreclosure. You never know if we're suddenly going to come into a lot of money. And so this was before I was deeply doing this mindset work that I teach now and that I have programs for. And I knew you just focus on what you want and the universe takes care of the rest. And I had this list, and the house that we ended up buying had just about everything on the list that I wanted. And I really manifested it. And I even manifested it to the point I used to say to people, I know we can get most of what's on this list, but we probably can't get all of it. And I even manifested that part because actually I think if I'd focused on getting everything that was on the list, we would have. But we got exactly what I projected and expected, which is we're going to get most of these things. But to the point where people couldn't believe the house that we got and the things that it had. And so it's important to focus on what you want and focus on that vision and not worry about the how. And trust yourself, trust your intuition, because the desire for a house, I wanted a house that was a family house. And most of the houses in Sedona, they're all the same. Like they don't have family rooms. They're 3-bedroom, 2-bath. So it's like retired couple, office, guest room, and no yard. It's just not what I wanted for raising a family. And it was much harder to find a family home. And so, but I knew what I wanted and I knew I could get it. And I just kept holding that image and I took the actions to search for it until it became the actual reality. Remember, everything starts in the formless first. Everything's created twice, first in thoughts, then in reality or in physical form. So the intuition will guide us to those things and following our gut. The house that we ended up buying, we actually looked at and I talked myself out of it a couple of times, rationalized why it wasn't the right house for us. And then one day my dad, I think, said to me, he's like, this sounds like everything you're looking for. So it was right there in front of me and I still didn't see it. I manifested it and didn't even see it. So that can happen too. So then I came up to the house with a different attitude and an openness. See, remember, it's about receiving, not being in your head, not making a list of all the things you want and you don't want, but being in a receiving state. I came up to the house and I sat in it and I felt in it and I sat here and I breathed and the house was empty. And I'm not great at visuals. And so like if the house had been staged, honestly, I probably would have known right away I loved it, but it was empty and I couldn't quite visualize past some of what I was seeing. So I closed my eyes in the house, sat there, breathed. And as I sat there, this feeling came through me and it said, this is your house. So And we got it for just barely over what I was intent on, like our what we were going to pay for a home. So we're coming towards the end here. I like to keep these as close to 20 or 30 minutes as possible. And so I want to honor that and that you might be listening to this on the way to work or when you're getting ready. And I want you to get through it. I know I have lots of things I listen to and they can add up. Keep working on, and for those of you that have good intuition, it can get better, right? It can get stronger. It is our ticket to magic. It is our communication, direct line of communication to our higher selves, to God, spirit, universe, and to everything that we want. And it communicates through feelings and thoughts and just knowingness. We know. Always act on that knowingness. And the last thing I want to say is when I do that exercise with people, and I don't do it with everybody, where we breathe and we call in and I only need to do that if somebody, or it only comes up to do that if someone is starting to get in their own way and they're starting to overthink it. And I'm like, hey, are you open to like what your higher guidance says? But I tell them, you have to act on it. Like if your higher guidance says no, fine. Then that's no, and you're clear. This whole, like, I got to think about it. We put ourselves in this indecisive state. Everything starts with a decision, and the universe rewards speed and quick decision making. But we also get ourselves in this situation where we feel like it's irresponsible to make quick decisions. But the thing is we all know already in our beingness whether something is right or not right for us. I knew the moment I engaged deeply in conversations with my husband that he was the one. And that's a different story. I'll tell you a different day, but I denied. I was like, what? How can I know that already? And so if I do that exercise with people, I say to them, but you have to listen. If it's no, that's fine. I'm not attached. But if it's yes, and you don't listen, you're damaging that relationship. It is damaging to get the intuitive hits. Like how many times have we left the house and we get this intuition, like I should have done something, and then we don't do it and something happens? Follow those always. And so if we don't listen, there will be consequences. And so a woman recently, I offered to do the exercise and she wanted to do it. And then I said, you really have to act on it. And I said, so are you comfortable with that? And she was like, no, actually, I don't want to do that. I said, because if your higher guidance comes in and it says yes, and then you choose no, we're ignoring that guidance. So listen to the guidance. It won't steer you wrong. I just don't believe it steers us wrong. It comes from a higher place than we can even imagine. And the mind is not from even the mind is not from that higher place of that highest guidance. So the rationalization, it's served its purpose, and it's time to let go and start betting on yourself, following your higher guidance, following your dreams, following your intuition, and live a life of joy, passion, purpose, where you're thriving. Because if you're not following your intuition, you're probably not thriving, because you're making all types of choices that you feel you have to do and believing that you're trapped, versus really just engage in your full potential. So thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it. I love talking about intuition. And remember to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you like this, leave us a rating. If you enjoyed it, a review, share it with your friends, start working on and upload. We can always keep going higher, deepening that relationship. So whether you're at the baby stages or you're pretty good with it, go even deeper with it. And I will look forward to being with you again next week. Thanks so much. Take care. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Up Level, Real Health, Real Talk. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your health journey, one that nourishes not just your body, but your mind and spirit as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's episode, please leave a review. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep thriving. And remember, true wellness is a journey, and you are on the right path.